Sarah Martinez had always been invisible in crowds. At 28, she worked as a data analyst for a defense contractor in Virginia Beach. Her days were spent behind computer screens, analyzing patterns and numbers that helped military operations run smoothly. Nobody at work really knew her beyond polite morning greetings and occasional small talk about the weather. The invitation came on a Tuesday morning. Her supervisor, Mike Henderson, approached her desk with an unusual request. The company was hosting a team-building event at the local military shooting range, and they needed someone from her department to participate. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She had never mentioned to anyone at work that she had been shooting competitively since she was 12 years old. Growing up in rural Montana, Sarah learned to shoot from her grandfather, a Korean War veteran who believed every person should know how to handle a firearm safely. Every weekend throughout her teenage years, she practiced at the local range. Her grandfather would watch proudly as she consistently hit targets that seasoned hunters struggled with. By age 16, she was winning state-level competitions, but when she moved to the East Coast for college, she quietly left that part of her life behind. The corporate world didn't seem like a place where her shooting skills would be valued or even understood. She had learned to blend in, to be the quiet, reliable employee who completed her tasks efficiently and went home without drawing attention. Her apartment was neat and simple, with no trophies or medals visible to remind her of the marksman she once was. When Mike explained that the event was voluntary and that most people were nervous about trying something new, Sarah almost declined. She had spent years perfecting the art of being unremarkable. But something inside her stirred, a longing for the familiar weight of a rifle in her hands and the satisfying ping of metal on metal when a shot found its mark. The shooting range was located just outside the city, a professional facility used primarily by law enforcement and military personnel. As Sarah arrived that Saturday morning with her coworkers, she noticed the serious atmosphere. This wasn't a casual recreational facility, but a place where people came to maintain life or death skills. Her coworkers gathered nervously near the entrance, making jokes to hide their anxiety. Most had never held a real firearm before. The range master, a gruff former Marine named Sergeant Rodriguez, briefed them on safety protocols with military precision. Sarah listened carefully, though she could have recited the rules from memory. The group was assigned to lanes in the beginner section, where they would use .22 caliber rifles to shoot at paper targets. Sarah hung back, letting others go first, watching as they struggled with basic stance and grip. Her supervisor Mike managed to hit the target a few times, but was clearly frustrated with his scattered shots. When her turn came, Sarah approached the firing line quietly. She checked the rifle with practiced movements that were so natural she didn't realize how professional they appeared. Her stance was textbook perfect, her breathing controlled, her grip exactly as her grandfather had taught her decades earlier. The first shot rang out, and a perfect hole appeared in the center ring of the target. Her coworkers assumed it was beginner's luck. The second shot landed right next to the first. Then, the third. By the fifth shot, a tight group of holes clustered in the bullseye, and people began to take notice. "Nice shooting," commented a voice behind her. Sarah turned to see a tall man in military fatigues watching her with interest. He wasn't part of her company group, but his presence commanded respect. Other people seemed to straighten up when he walked by. Sarah nodded politely and stepped back to let the next person take their turn. She had already decided to keep her performance modest, not wanting to draw too much attention. But, as the morning progressed, she found herself enjoying the familiar comfort of the range environment more than she had expected. During the lunch break, she overheard conversations about the mysterious quiet woman who seemed to know what she was doing with a rifle. Her coworkers were curious, but too intimidated to ask direct questions. Sarah preferred it that way. She finished her sandwich and prepared for the afternoon session, unaware that someone had been watching her very carefully and was about to change everything. The afternoon session introduced longer distances and different types of targets. While her coworkers struggled with the increased challenge, Sarah found herself falling into old rhythms. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory, reminding her to feel the wind, account for distance, and trust her instincts. At the 100-yard range, Sarah's shots continued to find their mark with remarkable consistency. She wasn't trying to show off, but muscle memory, and years of training took over. Each shot was deliberate and precise, creating patterns on the target that looked like textbook examples of marksmanship. Commander James Mitchell had been observing the corporate group from a distance. As the officer in charge of a Navy SEAL training unit stationed nearby, he often used this range for his team's practice sessions. He had arrived early to inspect the facilities before his unit's training exercise scheduled for later that day. What caught his attention wasn't just Sarah's accuracy, but her entire approach. The way she handled the rifle, her breathing technique, her stance, everything indicated serious training and experience. This wasn't someone who had learned to shoot from YouTube videos or weekend courses. This was someone who had been properly trained and had maintained those skills through dedicated practice. Commander Mitchell had seen enough recreational shooters to recognize the difference. Sarah moved with the quiet confidence of someone who belonged on a range, someone who understood not just how to hit a target, but why each element of the shooting process mattered. As the corporate group prepared for their final challenge, a 200-yard precision shooting exercise, Commander Mitchell positioned himself where he could observe more closely. The range master had set up targets that would challenge even experienced shooters, expecting most of the beginners to struggle significantly at this distance. Sarah's co-workers took their turns with predictable results. Shots scattered wide of the target, with most people having difficulty even seeing where their bullets landed. The distance made the targets appear impossibly small, and the afternoon wind added another layer of complexity. When Sarah stepped to the firing line, she took a moment to assess the conditions. She felt the wind direction, noted its strength, and adjusted her aim accordingly. Her first shot at 200 yards struck just outside the bullseye. She made a slight correction, and her second shot found the center ring. The third, fourth, and fifth shots formed a tight grouping that would have impressed competitive shooters. The range fell silent. Even Sergeant Rodriguez, who had seen thousands of shooters come through his facility, stopped what he was doing to watch. Sarah's co-workers stared in amazement, finally, understanding that their quiet colleague possessed skills they had never imagined. Commander Mitchell approached the firing line as Sarah stepped back. He examined her target through binoculars, confirming what he had observed from a distance. The shot grouping was exceptional by any standard, remarkable for someone supposedly participating in a casual corporate event. "That's outstanding shooting," he said, extending his hand. "Commander James Mitchell, U.S. Navy." Sarah shook his hand politely. "Sarah Martinez." "Thank you, sir. Where did you learn to shoot like that?" he asked directly. Sarah hesitated. She wasn't used to discussing her background, especially with someone of obvious authority and expertise. "My grandfather taught me when I was young," she said simply. Commander Mitchell nodded, sensing there was much more to the story. "Your grandfather taught you well? That kind of precision doesn't come from weekend plinking. You've had serious training." Before Sarah could respond, her supervisor Mike approached, overhearing the conversation. "Sarah, I had no idea you were such a marksman. This is incredible. Why didn't you ever mention this?" Sarah felt uncomfortable with the sudden attention. She had spent years avoiding exactly this kind of scrutiny. "It's just a hobby from growing up," she said, attempting to downplay the situation. Commander Mitchell exchanged a knowing look with Sergeant Rodriguez. Both men recognized skill when they saw it, and they also recognized someone who was being modest about exceptional abilities. As the corporate group prepared to leave, Commander Mitchell made a decision that would change Sarah's life. He had been dealing with a challenging situation in his unit, and he believed he might have just found an unexpected solution. "Ms. Martinez," he called out as Sarah gathered her things. "Would you mind staying a few more minutes? I'd like to discuss something with you." Sarah's co-workers looked curious as they loaded into their vehicles, but she waved goodbye and walked back toward where Commander Mitchell waited. She had no idea that this conversation would lead her back to a world she thought she had left behind forever. Commander Mitchell led Sarah to a quiet area of the range where they could talk privately. The afternoon sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the facility. Sarah felt nervous, but curious about what this experienced military officer wanted to discuss with her. "I'll be direct," Commander Mitchell began. "I've been in the military for 20 years, and I know exceptional marksmanship when I see it. What you demonstrated today goes far beyond casual shooting skills. You have the precision and technique of someone with extensive training." Sarah remained quiet, unsure how to respond. She had never talked about her competitive shooting background with anyone in her professional life. Commander Mitchell continued, "I'm facing a unique challenge with my unit, and I believe you might be able to help. We're training for a specialized mission that requires a level of precision shooting that, frankly, some of my SEALs are struggling with. They're excellent soldiers, but this particular skill set requires something extra." He explained that the mission involved providing overwatch and precision support in an urban environment. The shooting distances were extreme, and the margin for error was zero. Lives would depend on perfect accuracy under pressure. We've been working with military snipers, but we need someone who can also train others. Someone who understands not just how to shoot, but how to teach the mental aspects of precision marksmanship, he said. Sarah was stunned. "Sir, I work in data analysis. I haven't competed in shooting for over 10 years. I'm not qualified to train Navy SEALs." Commander Mitchell smiled. "I've seen enough today to know that skills like yours don't just disappear. And, frankly, your civilian background might be exactly what we need. Sometimes military training can be too rigid. We need someone who thinks differently." He asked about her competitive background, and, slowly, Sarah began to open up. She told him about the state championships, the precision rifle competitions, the countless hours of practice that had made shooting feel as natural as breathing. "My grandfather always said that shooting was 90% mental," she explained. "The physical mechanics are important, but the real challenge is controlling your mind, staying calm under pressure, and trusting your training even when everything around you is chaos." Commander Mitchell nodded. "Exactly what we need. Would you be willing to come to our facility next week, just to observe our training and maybe offer some insights?" Sarah felt torn. Part of her was excited by the possibility of returning to the world of precision shooting. But another part worried about stepping outside the safe, predictable life she had built. "I would need permission from my company," she said finally. "Already considered that," Commander Mitchell replied. "Your defense contractor has worked with us before on consulting projects. This would be a short-term technical advisory position. Your supervisor Mike seemed very supportive when I briefly mentioned the possibility." The following Tuesday, Sarah found herself at the Naval Special Warfare Training Facility. The environment was unlike anything she had experienced. SEALs moved with purposeful intensity, every action focused on mission readiness. Commander Mitchell introduced her to the team struggling with long-range precision work. These were elite soldiers, experts in their field, but they approached shooting with military discipline that sometimes worked against the fluid, instinctive style needed for extreme accuracy. Sarah watched them practice, noting technical issues that were preventing them from achieving their potential. Their stance was too rigid, their breathing too controlled, their focus too narrow. They were trying to force precision instead of allowing it to flow naturally. When Commander Mitchell asked for her observations, Sarah felt intimidated about critiquing elite soldiers. But she remembered her grandfather's advice about honest feedback being the greatest gift you can give a student. "They're too tense," she said quietly. "They're fighting the rifle instead of working with it. Precision shooting is like a conversation between you and the target. You can't force it." She demonstrated with one of their rifles, showing how subtle changes in grip pressure and breathing rhythm could dramatically improve accuracy. The SEALs watched with professional interest as she consistently hit targets they had been struggling with. Over the next several days, Sarah worked individually with each team member. She taught them breathing techniques her grandfather had learned in Korea, mental visualization exercises from her competitive days, and the importance of trusting their instincts rather than overthinking every shot. The breakthrough came when Petty Officer Rodriguez, the team's most experienced member, achieved his first perfect score at extreme distance using Sarah's techniques. The improvement was so dramatic that other members of the unit began requesting time with the quiet civilian consultant who seemed to understand something they had been missing. Commander Mitchell observed these sessions with growing respect for Sarah's teaching abilities. She had a gift for identifying each person's specific challenges and finding ways to help them overcome mental barriers that had been limiting their performance. By the end of the week, the entire team had improved significantly. More importantly, they had developed confidence in their abilities that would serve them well in high-pressure situations. As Sarah prepared to return to her regular job, Commander Mitchell made another request that would test her willingness to step even further outside her comfort zone. Commander Mitchell's final request came on Friday evening as Sarah packed up her materials from the week-long training session. The improvement in his team's performance had been remarkable, but he needed something more for their upcoming deployment. "Sarah, I have an unusual proposition," he began. "Our mission requires someone to provide overwatch support from extreme distances. The shooting positions are beyond what even our best snipers are comfortable with. After watching you work with my team this week, I believe you might be the only person who can make these shots consistently." Sarah stared at him in disbelief. "Sir, you're talking about an actual military operation. I'm a civilian data analyst. I've never been in combat." "I understand your concerns," Commander Mitchell replied calmly. "But this isn't a combat role in the traditional sense. You would be positioned safely, providing precision support for extraction operations. The distances involved are 1,200 to 1,500 yards, shots that require someone with your exceptional skills." He explained that the mission involved extracting captured intelligence assets from hostile territory. The SEAL team would handle the dangerous work, but they needed someone who could provide precise covering fire if things went wrong. The shooting distances were so extreme that missing could mean the difference between mission success and losing American lives. Sarah felt overwhelmed. Everything about this proposal terrified her, yet she couldn't ignore the fact that people's lives might depend on skills she possessed. "I need time to think," she said. Commander Mitchell nodded. "Take the weekend. But I need an answer Monday morning." That weekend, Sarah called her grandfather for the first time in months. Now 87 and living in an assisted living facility in Montana, he listened quietly as she explained the situation. "Granddad, I don't know if I'm brave enough for something like this," she admitted. Her grandfather was silent for a long moment. "Sarah, I never told you why I really taught you to shoot," he said finally. "During the war, I lost friends because we didn't have anyone who could make the impossible shots when it mattered. I saw good men die because the enemy had better marksmen than we did." He continued, "I taught you because I recognized something special in you. Not just steady hands or good eyes, but the ability to stay calm when everything around you is falling apart. That's a gift, and gifts are meant to be used to help others." Monday morning, Sarah walked into Commander Mitchell's office with her decision. "I'll do it, but I have conditions. I want to understand exactly what's involved, and I want additional training on military protocols and emergency procedures." Commander Mitchell smiled. "Already arranged. You'll spend the next 2 weeks in intensive preparation." The training was unlike anything Sarah had ever experienced. She learned tactical communications, emergency extraction procedures, and how to work as part of a coordinated military operation. Most importantly, she practiced the specific shots she might need to make under various weather and lighting conditions. The mission took place 3 weeks later in a remote region that couldn't be disclosed to her beforehand. Sarah found herself positioned on a hillside overlooking a compound where American personnel were being held. Her role was to provide overwatch while the SEAL team conducted the extraction. Through her scope, she could see the compound clearly despite the 1,400-yard distance. Her heart pounded, but her hands remained steady. This was what all those years of training had prepared her for, even though she had never imagined it would lead to this moment. The extraction began just after midnight. Everything went according to plan initially, with the SEAL team moving silently through the compound. Then, complications arose. Enemy guards appeared from an unexpected direction, threatening to cut off the team's escape route. Commander Mitchell's voice came through her earpiece. "Overwatch, we have targets at your 10 o'clock, approximately 200 yards from the extraction point. Can you neutralize the threat?" Sarah adjusted her scope, accounting for wind and distance. Through the green glow of her night vision equipment, she could see the enemy fighters moving toward her teammates. These weren't targets on a practice range. These were real people whose actions could result in American deaths. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory. "Sometimes protecting the good guys means stopping the bad guys. Trust your training, trust your instincts, and do what needs to be done." Sarah took a deep breath, found her natural point of aim, and squeezed the trigger. The shot traveled through the darkness with perfect precision, eliminating the immediate threat. 2 more shots followed, ensuring the SEAL team's safe withdrawal route remained clear. "Excellent shooting, Overwatch," came Commander Mitchell's voice. "Package is secure. We're coming home." The mission was a complete success. All American personnel were extracted safely, and valuable intelligence was recovered. Sarah's precision shooting had played a crucial role in ensuring no American lives were lost during the operation. As they flew back to base, Sarah realized that her life had changed forever. She was no longer the invisible data analyst who avoided attention. She had become someone who used extraordinary skills to protect others when it mattered most. The debriefing took place the day after the mission. Sarah sat in a secure conference room with Commander Mitchell and several other senior officers she had never met before. The weight of what she had accomplished was still settling in. "Ms. Martinez," began Admiral Thompson, the senior officer present, "your performance during this operation was exceptional. The precision shots you made under extreme conditions saved American lives and ensured mission success." Sarah nodded quietly, still processing the surreal nature of recent events. 3 weeks ago, she had been a data analyst attending a corporate team-building event. Now she was being debriefed by Navy admirals after a classified military operation. Commander Mitchell spoke next. "Sarah, we'd like to discuss your future. What you accomplished proves that you have skills the military needs. We're prepared to offer you a permanent consulting position with our special operations units." The offer was tempting and terrifying at the same time. Sarah had discovered parts of herself she had forgotten existed, capabilities that went far beyond analyzing data and living quietly in the background. "I need to understand what this would mean for my life," she said carefully. "I'm not a soldier. I don't know if I belong in this world permanently." Admiral Thompson leaned forward. "You wouldn't be a soldier in the traditional sense. You'd be a civilian specialist, working with our most elite units when situations require your unique skills. The missions would be infrequent, but critical." Over the next hour, they outlined a role that would allow Sarah to maintain her civilian life while serving as a precision shooting consultant for special operations. She would undergo additional training, maintain security clearances, and be available for missions that required her exceptional marksmanship abilities. The conversation was interrupted by an unexpected visitor. Sergeant Rodriguez from the shooting range entered the room, looking more formal than Sarah had ever seen him. "Excuse me, Admiral," he said, "but I wanted to speak with Ms. Martinez before she makes any decisions about her future." Sarah was surprised to see the gruff range master in this setting, but Sergeant Rodriguez explained that he was actually a retired Marine gunnery sergeant who worked closely with various military units. "Sarah," he said, "I've been running that range for 15 years. I've seen thousands of people shoot, including Olympic marksmen, military snipers, and competitive champions. What you did today was different. It wasn't just about hitting targets. It was about using a gift to protect people who couldn't protect themselves." He continued, "Your grandfather would be proud, not just of your shooting, but of the courage you showed when it mattered most. That's what real marksmanship is about." The mention of her grandfather made Sarah's decision clearer. She remembered his stories about using his skills to protect his fellow soldiers, and how he had taught her that abilities came with responsibilities. "I'll accept the consulting position," she said finally, "but I want to continue working with training as well. If I can help more people develop these skills, maybe other lives can be saved." Admiral Thompson smiled. "That's exactly what we hoped you'd say." 6 months later, Sarah stood on the same shooting range where this journey had begun. But now she was there in an official capacity, training a new group of special operations personnel. Her techniques had been incorporated into advanced marksmanship courses, and her success stories had inspired other civilian experts to contribute their skills to military operations. Commander Mitchell approached as she finished working with a particularly challenging student. "How does it feel to be back where it all started?" he asked. Sarah looked around the range where she had first caught his attention. "Different," she said thoughtfully. "I used to come to ranges to escape from the world. Now I come here to prepare for engaging with it." The irony wasn't lost on her. For years, she had worked hard to remain invisible, to blend into the background and avoid attention. Now her role required her to step forward when others couldn't, to use skills that made her impossible to ignore. As the training session concluded, Commander Mitchell called the group to attention. This had become a tradition whenever Sarah completed training with a new unit. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "you've just completed advanced marksmanship training with one of the finest precision shooters in the country. Ms. Martinez represents the best of what happens when exceptional skill meets unwavering courage. He paused, then continued with formal military bearing. For her service to this nation and the lives she has helped save, I render this salute. Commander Mitchell came to attention and saluted Sarah with the crisp precision of a career military officer. The entire training group followed suit, rendering honors to the quiet woman who had emerged from obscurity to serve her country in ways she never could have imagined. Sarah returned the salute, thinking of her grandfather and how proud he would be. She was no longer the woman who went unseen. She had found her purpose in a world where being invisible was no longer an option, where her gifts were not just acknowledged but desperately needed. The transformation was complete. The data analyst who had once avoided attention had become someone whose skills commanded respect from the nation's most elite warriors. And she had learned that sometimes the greatest courage comes not from seeking the spotlight, but from stepping into it when duty calls.